The whitewash of a violent insurrection. 137 days after the storming of America's Capitol, Republicans moved to derail a far-reaching January 6th commission. Here at home, the mayor delivers additional pay to Houston firefighters. But after suffering 7 years without a raise, union leaders insist the score is far from settled. And Houston ratepayers, brace yourself. Bemoaning a battered and broken water system, city leaders are coming for $2 billion of your money. I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Fox 26 legal and political analyst Chris Tritico. Next up, former Houston City Council member Sue Lovell. In the 3 spot, well-known conservative commentator Gary Polland. Batting cleanup, entrepreneur, restaurateur, and host of Fish, Grits, and Politics, Marcus Davis. And closing us out, Charles Blain, founder of Urban Reform. Let's begin. Where were you on January 6th? What went through your mind as you witnessed via live broadcast hordes of confirmed Donald Trump supporters push and batter their way past vastly outnumbered police, ultimately crushing into the epicenter of American democracy, vandalizing the Capitol building and its contents while seeking to overturn the outcome of a presidential election through premeditated acts of violence? Did you believe what you were witnessing was in fact a dangerous insurrection, or rather what multiple Republican members of Congress this week described as incivility that was far less threatening and far more benign?
It was not an insurrection, and we cannot call it that and be truthful. The House floor was never breached, and it was not an insurrection. This is the truth. There was an undisciplined mob. There were some rioters and some who committed acts of vandalism. But let me be clear, there was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie.
That same Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde shown here on the House floor the day of the attack, mouth agape in horror. Panel Republicans, including leaders Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, are downplaying the Capitol assault in a concerted effort to derail formation of a congressionally mandated January 6th commission. Let's begin our discussion with Marcus Davis.
You know, Greg, this is a cocktail. It is a dangerous and ugly mixture of both partisan politics and white privilege. And I use the word dangerous mix and white privilege and partisan simply because it's all mixed together. And there's no way in the world that anybody of color, anybody of Muslim descent would have been able to do this and be classified as a non-insurrectionist. I don't know where we get off redefining words and taking definitions that have been established for years and changing them, but this is absurd. We investigated Benghazi till the cows came home, as we should have. And this is something that should be investigated, and we should not be turning away from it. It is such a disastrous hole that the Republican Party is going down that it is disgusting. This is unraveling the fiber of this nation, and it's unfortunate that we can't see it.
All right, Gary Polland, is there a case to be made for moving past this and just letting the Justice Department handle the investigation?
Look, the Justice Department has got 200 plus people that they've taken into custody. There were crimes committed, criminal mischief, maybe felony criminal mischief, trespassing. It wasn't an insurrection. It's something that I found abhorrent that had happened, and I lay it primarily at the Capitol Police, who were shockingly unprepared. But for Marcus to call this white privilege is just garbage. Look, we had riots all over the summer, led by Black Lives Matters, billions of dollars of damage done, and nobody gets prosecuted. They even expunged all their records by this Democratic Justice Department. So does that mean there's black privilege? That wasn't right either. That shouldn't have happened. So we need to get moving. This whole idea of a commission is the whole idea to preserve this as a political issue. And to keep Donald Trump in front of the American people, because the Democrats are finding their numbers are in decline because they don't have Donald Trump to attack anymore as his numbers kind of fade.
All right, Chris Tritico, an unprecedented sacking of America's capital. We had a commission for the assassination of John F. Kennedy, 9/11. Does this qualify?
Before, Greg, I just got to give a shout out to the best university in Texas, Sam Houston State University, the national championship victory.
Fake news.
A week ago today. Now, look, we got to have a commission on this, and for the Republican Party to be whitewashing this and saying it didn't happen, that's just ridiculous. This is a stain on the country. It's a stain on the last presidency, Donald Trump, who instigated this, sent them down there, said, I'm going to join you, and started this. And for the Republicans to be saying this didn't occur and we don't need to investigate this is silliness. We need to investigate this. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to move the country past this after a proper investigation is had.
Charles Blain, take 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to push back against this. The Republicans. If not for Republicans in the House, this wouldn't have moved forward. Some joined in with Democrats to support this. Actually, one of the most conservative Republicans in the House, Van Taylor, who has nothing but A+ ratings on all conservative scorecards, voted to support this because he recognized something went wrong that day. And when you juxtapose a picture of a Black Lives Matter rally outside of the Capitol and what happened that day, it looked as though Capitol Police were ready for war on the day of a Black Lives Matter protest and not that day. And so the question is, what happened and why were they not prepared? And that is why Republicans joined in with Democrats to support this, to find out that answer.
All right, Sue Lovell, Charles makes an important point. Some Republicans did cross the partisan divide. Look, you're raising your granddaughter. She's going to study about this. Does she need the benefit of a January 6th commission and its findings?
Here's what my granddaughter knows and will know and does know, is that people died that day in our Capitol simply because they went to work and a group of people decided to storm the Capitol. There should be a commission, absolutely, and we should want to get to the bottom of this. But please, in every conversation, let's remember, people died that day in the Capitol of the United States of America simply because they were there doing their jobs.
Actually, that's not true. The only person, that's not accurate.
People died.
Up next, Judge Lina lifts Harris County off dead red. So tell Captain Quarantine it's finally safe to come out. And later, it's coming, folks. A multi-billion-dollar boost in our collective water bill. We will talk about why and whether there's another way around the half hour. Welcome back. You could call it proof positive that our pandemic coast is finally clearing. Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo, perhaps the most COVID-conscious governmental leader in the country, has finally lifted the stay-at-home advisory and moved our community threat level from red to orange.
I'm so proud of your resilience. I'm so proud of your commitment to each other, your commitment to life, your commitment to getting past this. So it's a moment to celebrate, and let's keep the good news coming by getting those vaccines.
Of course, Hidalgo's announcement comes nearly 3 months after Governor Abbott fully reopened the entire state. Let's go to Gary Polland. What do you think of Hidalgo's move?
Well, better late than never. She's the last political leader, I think, in America that woke up. Look, the murder rate in Harris County is higher than the death rate for COVID. She don't say anything about that. She has COVID phobia. We still have monitors in the courthouse, making sure people stay separated and don't crowd elevators. Lina Hidalgo came to this job with no experience, and her no experience shows. She's been a terrible leader. She has hurt the county's economy, and orange is a joke at this point. We ought to be down at the base level.
Okay, Chris Tritico, jump in here. Was Hidalgo justified to stay on dead red this long?
Well, I think we may have stayed on red a little bit longer than we needed to, but I think that Lina Hidalgo has done what she needed to do to get the county safe. This is the most populous county in the state, one of the most populous counties in the country. And to keep a county this populous safe, she followed the advice of doctors, which many in our state didn't do, our governor didn't do. And she was following the advice of the doctors and the medical professionals that said, this is what you need to do to stay safe. And our county has stayed safer than most of the counties in the United States. So I think she did a really good job.
Okay, jump in here, Charles Blain.
Yeah, I mean, so I as of Tuesday, she's changed the guidelines, but as late as yesterday, Saturday, if you go into readyharris.org, it was still red. So this is like misinformation for folks in the community who want to go and check and find out what's going on in the community. It's not even updated to let them know that it has changed. And even so, the orange indication says that that means there's still uncontrolled spread and that it's still a pretty tense situation. And we shouldn't even be on that. We are well past that. And so I think she was very overly cautious. The most populous counties in the country have moved off of this and have reopened, and I don't understand why we're still holding steady when we have a prime opportunity to get people back to some sense of normalcy.
Marcus Davis, you realize that you would have had very few customers if people had followed completely the county judge's guidelines.
That's not my concern. My concern over the pandemic hadn't been whether or not we have very few customers or not. My concern over the pandemic, top priority, is that America is safe, that Houstonians are safe, that Texans are safe. That is priority number one. I don't mix that bag. Is it painful for business? Of course. Did the judge do the right thing? I can't say she did or she didn't. All I know is that we've never experienced a pandemic before in our lifetime, and nobody knew how to handle it. And a lot of people made good decisions. A lot of people made bad decisions. Some made more bad decisions than the others. It's amazing that we can find what happened with the county judge, but we can't find the fault in the president that handled this thing poorly, a governor that didn't handle this thing appropriately. But we can find the faults and the flaws in the judge simply because she's of the opposing party, and that's the unfortunate part. This is all based on what party they're affiliated with and not whether or not she made the right decision or not.
Sue, I got 20 seconds left.
Sure. Well, I don't think it depends upon what Governor Abbott said. I think saying going from orange to red, that she could have been quicker, but she could have been more articulate now, saying, we've done a good job, but here's what we need you to do now. We need you to continue to distance. We need you to continue to wear your mask if you choose to. This is what we need you to do to stay where we are, because we've done a good job here. And I thought that lack of articulation really hurt her message.
Got to leave it there. Up next, Governor Greg Abbott pulling the plug on federal pandemic benefits for the jobless. But will less relief money spur more Texans back to the workplace? Uncanny. Last week we posed the question, should Governor Abbott join 16 other states and spur idle Texans back into the workplace by cutting off generous federal jobless benefits? Nearly on cue, Abbott delivered an answer. Effective June 26, unemployed folks in the Lone Star State will no longer have access to that extra $1,200 per month from Uncle Sam. Panel, while there was lots of complaining when the news broke, does this amount to what some folks call tough love? I pose that question to you, Charles Blain.
It's tough love, but there's opportunity out there and people need to take it. We are the 22nd state to do this, so that we're not alone. And according to the Texas Workforce Commission, there's 60% more jobs posted today than in February 2020. 76% of those jobs pay more than $11.50 per hour, which it's not an amazing pay, but it is better than minimum wage. And only 2% of the ones posted pay minimum wage. So there are opportunities out there for people to get out there and get jobs instead of depending on this unemployment boost. And so I hope they move that, but it is a little bit of tough love. Yes.
Sue, what's your take on this?
I think it's tough love, but why not take that money and help those businesses, maybe offer signing bonuses or bonuses to people that want to be employed. So to all those businesses that are having a hard time, give them the money that they can offer. If you come to work for us, we'll give you a bonus. It works when you're leasing apartments, when you say, hey, you get 2 months free or $100 bonus. Use the money in a productive way instead of just pulling it back. Give it to businesses and let them use it to get people hired in.
Marcus, you don't agree with Governor Abbott much, but do you agree with him here?
I would say I don't agree with Governor Abbott much. I just disagree with him when he's wrong, right? And it's just that simple. And in this case, he happens to be absolutely right. There is a shortage of workers in our state. There are people who stayed home legitimately, but there are some people who understand that they can make more or the equal amount by living off of the unemployment. And that is detrimental to small businesses. It is detrimental to our state. It is detrimental to our nation and to our economy. It's important that, that we get up and get back to work. So I applaud him on this move.
All right, Chris Tritico, what's your take?
I've been torn on this issue since states started doing this. And today I read that the president announced yesterday that the economy is making building 500,000 jobs a month now. And so I haven't seen any numbers on the states that are doing this, but if there's enough jobs out there for people to start filling in, then I think it's time that we started moving away from this and people start filling into these jobs. And so I'm not really opposed to what the governor's doing as long as there's enough jobs for the people who are coming off of unemployment to step into those jobs and get a job.
All right, final word on this topic goes to Gary Polland.
Hey, look, the governor's absolutely right. He had 21 states do it before he did, so that was okay. They kind of greased the skids. And look, there are jobs out there for everybody. In fact, if you look, they're paying signing bonuses. They're paying well above minimum wage. There is competition to get people to come to work. So that's a good thing. And so people need to get off unemployment and go back to work. The other alternative is give people a guaranteed annual income, let them stay home and not work. That's not how America works.
All right, Charles Blain, you heard the entire conversation. Anything strike you that you want to rebut or agree with? Real quick.
No, I think I want to just double down on what Gary said. A lot of these cities are actually looking at guaranteed basic incomes, and that's not the way we should be going. We should not be going in that direction. So let's continue to get people back to work. Jobs are out there. Restaurants are on the news every single day begging for employees. So let's get people actually in these jobs and start getting them filled so we can get back to normal.
Charles, you should have doubled down on what I said. I was right.
His whole panel agreed with the governor. So.
All right, going to break, you guys. Still to come. As we enter the final days of the legislative session, two of the smartest guys in any political room separate the winners and likely losers. Welcome back. By my read, there are just 8 days remaining for Texas lawmakers to complete their business before the Texas legislative session comes to an abrupt close. Thus far, Republicans have done plenty of conservative muscle flexing, pushing a fetal heartbeat abortion bill into law with permitless carry and controversial election security measures soon to follow. That said, there is much of import still on the table. For a healthy dose of stretch run insight, we spoke with two of the best in the business, Rice political analyst Mark Jones and Ross Ramsey, founding editor of the Texas Tribune. What is going on in terms of movement at the legislature on the total package of George Floyd police reform legislation?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think that they're going to require police officers to intervene when another officer is misbehaving or doing something illegal. I think they're going to require them to report on fellow officers doing that. I don't think they're going to get rid of qualified immunity, which basically gives police some liability protection when they're in the performance of their duties. It's something the activists really, really wanted. And I don't think they're going to defund the police. I think that turns out to be one of the ill-fated slogans of all time, and probably set back the protesters who wanted to maybe reform the police or remodel how policing is done in the country. It became a fight over whether you're backing the police or not, and the Republicans said we back the police, and they clearly won that fight.
Mark Jones, we saw zero move by the GOP to the middle and a huge move to their base. What's your take on what you've seen thus far?
Republicans are getting across the high-profile issues that the base really cares about, but one or two levels below that, a lot of the legislation that's passing is very well supported by Democrats, and actually it's the more conservative Republicans who aren't that wild about it.
The Democrats went into last November thinking they could take the Texas House, that they could maybe, win some races, and they got bupkis. They didn't produce anything, and the Republicans came out of that emboldened. And I think also with the idea that the most important election ahead of them isn't the general election in 2022, but the Republican primary in 2022. The way you win a Republican primary is you go to the most vociferous, anxious, noisy conservatives in the party, and that's what you see in the products of this session.
On the unanticipated priority of protecting the Texas grid against yet another disastrous winter storm, Analyst Jones believes state lawmakers are on track to badly underperform.
The fact that it's coming so late, I think, is indicative of the fact that the lobbyists have been working overtime to delay any real effectual reform that would have adversely affected the bottom line of these companies. But the downside of that is we probably haven't resolved the problem, in the sense that if we get another deep freeze next year like we had this past February, we're likely looking at blackouts again.
Up next, how thousands of battered Houston pipes will soon be taking a bigger bite out of everybody's household budget.
Everything is easier when people don't have to vote for a fee or to pay for it. It's all easy then. It's all easy. I wish I could say, voila, it is fixed. But you're going to pay for it.
Mayor Sylvester Turner, half persuading, half demanding that City Council get behind the $2 billion rate hike he says will be needed to upgrade the battered infrastructure of Houston's water system. A little history: in 2019, Turner settled a long-running pollution case with the EPA, which had admonished the city for allowing lots of sewage to seep into local lakes, rivers, and streams. The price tag of the agreement, $2 billion worth of mandatory improvements. Panel, the mayor says we have no surplus cash to meet the obligation, so ratepayers, rich and poor, will have to pony up for the next 15 years. Charles Blain, what do you think of that?
Last week, we yelled at the legislature for passing an electrical bill that pretty much said to ratepayers that, sorry, you didn't have electricity for a couple days, but now pay up so that we can fix the problem. Well, this is the same thing. It's sorry you didn't have water for a couple days, now pay up, you owe us. This has been a problem for a long time, and of course, it falls in this mayor's lap, but it wasn't of his creation. But why is it that taxpayers and ratepayers are always the ones carrying the pail at the end of the day? Why can't we look at structurally balanced budgets where you can put money into reserves to deal with long-term infrastructure problems? Imagine that. Imagine you had a city that budgeted properly and was able to do something like that. Additionally, we have federal funds coming in. So why can we not look at federal funds to alleviate the burden on ratepayers? It's unfair to them, given the time that we're in, that they should have to pay for this on top of everything else they dealt with this past year.
Sue Lovell, this problem stretches back to when you were on council. Why did the can continue to be kicked down the road?
Because it's expensive and it's going to be somewhat painful to fix. But look, Turner knew, and I heard his comment, and I wanted to ask him if he wanted a little cheese with that wine. But he's known about it since he came into office. It was a major #1 problem, and nothing was done. And they sat on it and let it get worse and worse and worse till finally we had no water. Then he never came out, had any meetings, any explanations about what happened. Did they go check the backup generators? If they had, and the generators kicked on, we wouldn't have lost the water pressure. So there's been no accountability. And he's just going to say, well, you didn't have water for 4 days. You want experience again. Guess what? We're gonna raise your water rates and like it or leave it. What do you want me to do? I think people would be willing to absorb that if they understood. And again, where's the rain tax money going that we did long ago? Why monies could be shifted around to help burden, but I don't think raising people's water bills is that high is the right solution.
Marcus Davis, people of all economic strata walk into your restaurant, you converse with them. How do you think they will take this higher water bill, not for 1 year, 2 year, but for 15 years?
How will they take it? They'll take it in the mail, and they'll pay it in the mail or online or what have you. You know, it's so unfortunate that this is the reality. And let me tell you, this is a direct result. And I'm going to go on something Sue said. This is a direct result of our political climate in our nation, right? People, I remember when 2 elections ago, I tried to encourage mayoral candidates, run on the truth. We know that there is a pension problem. We know that there is a water problem. We know these things are going to have to be paid for. We don't give politicians the room to stand up and tell the truth and say, we're going to have to pay for these, elect me, and we're going to fix these problems. We want them to lie to us and tell us, we're not going to raise your taxes. We're not going to do this. We're not going to, and that's the person that we vote for. We don't vote for the person that will stand flat-footed and tell you, we've got a problem. We need to fix it. Elect me, and I will be there to fix the problem.
Chris Tritico, from a legal standpoint, the city really doesn't have a choice here. I mean, I think the initial liability was somewhere around $5 or $6 billion. The mayor negotiated it down to $2 billion, but that's still a huge number.
Right. And look, when a government gets sued and gets a judgment against them, the courts can order government then to raise taxes to pay that liability. And that's where we are. And the mayor has no choice here, and the city council will have no choice here but to find the money to pay for this. And if it comes down to it, they have to raise taxes to do it. The problem here, Greg, is this is symbolic of government's whole failure across the country to deal with infrastructure for the last 30, 40 years. And this is where we are. Roads, bridges, water, electricity, all over the United States. And if we don't start paying attention to this in every aspect of our infrastructure, we're going to be raising taxes in every aspect of our lives to pay for these things. Billions and billions.
Got to leave it there, Chris. Got to leave it there, my friend. Still ahead, at long last, more money for Houston firefighters. But will a beefier paycheck end the ongoing battle with City Hall? And later, the controversy over critical race theory. Should discussion of social equity and ethnic bias be forbidden in Texas public schools? Welcome back. For the first time in 7 long years, Houston firefighters will see more money in their paychecks. That announcement this week from Mayor Sylvester Turner, who says he's setting aside $115 million in federal pandemic aid to boost firefighter compensation and make the department more pay competitive with counterparts in other large Texas cities. With contract talks between the city and the firefighter union mired in bitter stalemate since 2017, the additional wages will come outside of the collective bargaining process. Union President Marty Langton refers to the hike as a federal bonus, which does nothing to settle a multitude of outstanding issues, including deferred back pay.
The city's on the hook in the liability for hundreds of millions of dollars. And for somebody to come in and to graze over that is like not paying your mortgage for 5 years and saying, well, you know what, I'll just start paying what I believe I should be paying moving forward. I'm not going to settle what I owe you for not paying my mortgage. That's not how the real world works.
For the record panel, the additional pay increases firefighter salaries 18% over the next 3 years. Gary Polland, take 30 seconds on this issue.
Look, this is the mayor's problem. He did not inherit this, and it's all politics. He didn't like the firemen because they didn't support him, so he's fought him every way, and now we've reached the end. The courts have said, you're wrong. We've got Prop B. The people want more money for firemen, and he's going to have to find it. And the question is, where is he going to find it? Since this mayor's shown an inability to scrub the budget for extra dollars because everything is a priority. But the firemen are going to win. It's just a question of when it's going to finally be over. I actually think Turner hopes he can delay this long enough to hand this mess on to the next mayor.
Okay, Sue, jump in here.
Well, Marty's right. What they got is a bonus. It's not baked into the budget in the future. So he's just creating, again, another problem by not dealing. This is just, look, the 14th Court of Appeals said that collective bargaining is the vehicle by which you deal with the firefighters' contracts and raises. And the mayor wants to ignore it. He said, I can ignore it because I can't. But he can't. And so if he doesn't, the Court of Appeals will step in and they will take care of this problem.
Chris Tritico, you know all about the litigation because I brought it to you and you've given me analysis. What's your take?
Well, it's time to settle this thing. It's time for the mayor to go to the table and bargain this and get over it and get this behind him. This all started because of the pension issue, and the mayor wanted to get the pension from the legislature into the city, and that started this whole snowball. The mayor needs to get this resolved, settled, and done with. It's just a growing problem, and I don't think he can wait any longer. He needs to settle it.
Okay, final 30 seconds to you, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they needed a raise. I'm glad to see they're getting something. This is not an end of a fight. You would think that this would be the end, but it's far from it. I mean, there's a lot more to go. And it'll be interesting to see if the mayor looks at this as maybe a down payment for Prop B when Prop B is most likely ends up being ruled in favor of the firefighters. I'd imagine the city would try to finagle something like that. So it'll be interesting to watch, but this is just the beginning.
All right, up next, telling teachers what they can and cannot teach. Heavy pushback at the state capitol against so-called wokeness in Texas classrooms. Back to the Texas Legislature, where state lawmakers are on the cusp of banning instruction of critical race theory in our public schools. For those unfamiliar with the concept, critical race theory examines issues like white privilege and social inequity, both past and present. Supporters of the restrictions say CRT exacerbates and inflames racial division and distracts students and teachers, for that matter, from more important academic fundamentals. Opponents of the ban say outlawing or even suppressing classroom conversations involving inequities between races ignores reality and handicaps the ability of instructors to connect with students on important subject matter. Panel conservatives say they want Texas teachers to educate, not indoctrinate. I'm going to start with you, Marcus Davis.
There's a difference between educating and indoctrinating. And when you're telling the truth of what took place in this nation, then it is not indoctrinating. You're simply educating. When you are telling the evil sin that America has lived with, which is from slavery to the remnants, and yes, your favorite word, white privilege, Gary Pollard, a privilege that my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were denied in this nation. They are realities, and children should know them, and it should be explored. We're talking about education. We explore, we learn. We don't deflect and deny what actually is the truth.
All right, Charles Blain, I'm curious to hear what you have to say on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole critical race theory issue has been blown up and to steal a line from Marcus, politicized when it really shouldn't be, because it should be about academics and education. But critical race theory in of itself is a movement. It's an academic movement, which is a problem that you have this movement where you're trying to kind of twist what they're learning to fit a certain narrative. But the issue is that if you're going to remove that, you need to replace that with other areas of history that aren't being covered. You know, we all learn about the Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Frederick Douglass, but we don't learn about Denmark Vesey and all these other people and Robert Smalls, these lesser known figures. And so if we're going to remove critical race theory, we need to replace it with a more robust educational system that actually does acknowledge a lot of the things that Marcus was just talking about.
Chris Tritico, you often represent teachers in various venues. I'm interested to hear what you think, particularly if a teacher's hauled up for crossing the line here, if this in fact becomes law.
Well, it's going to be I'm completely opposed to this. There's a thing called academic freedom, and for the legislature to come in and dictate that we're not going to be teaching race in our classrooms takes a tool away from education and a tool away from teachers that is something that we ought to be teaching every student about the history of our nation, the history of how we got where we are, the history of what happened from the foundation of this country all the way through today, and what happened in the last year is basic to the foundation of this country. And I can't imagine what our legislature is thinking and even debating this.
All right, Sue, the final 20 seconds. This could preclude discussion of LGBTQ issues.
But I'm just opposed to it, and truthfully trying to regulate the kind of conversations and things that go on. You know, I have a 6-year-old granddaughter I'm raising, and she's in a very diverse group. The best education she has is to be around diversity and learn about people as people from other cultures and whose skin tone is different. That to me is the best way to educate our young people about people that aren't the same as them.
Gotta leave it there, still ahead. More than $1 billion worth of federal flood mitigation grants up for grabs, and Harris County gets a goose egg. Land Commissioner George P. Bush, you have some explaining to do. Some breaking news this weekend. More than $1 billion worth of federal flood control grants handed out, and Harris County in the city of Houston got completely shut out. Zero, nada. We're talking about the epicenter of Hurricane Harvey damage, the nation's 4th largest city. And Land Commissioner George P. Bush decided we don't qualify for a nickel. Panel, do you smell partisan politics here? I'm going to ask that question of Gary Polland.
I don't know if it's partisan politics, but I think I don't like the optics of it. I mean, obviously, Houston and Harris County suffered and needs assistance from the federal money coming here. I wish there was more transparency as to what happened. Like, why has Houston and Harris County been turned down? I understand there's information on there. Well, there could be money coming later, but we haven't told, like, what do we need to do? And so the question is, what does Harris and Houston need to do to get its fair share to deal with our flooding problems?
Sue, what's your instinct on this one?
My first was very immature leadership. For whatever reasons, that the money didn't come here. I think that the land commissioner's forgotten that we are his constituents too. We got hit really hard during Harvey. If he doesn't want to give it to the commissioner or the mayor, the Harris County Flood Control District does a great job. It's a nonpartisan organization, and give the money to them and let them come and do the work that needs to be done. But I thought it was a very, very immature and very cruel decision to the people in this region.
Charles Blain, George P. Bush, rumored to be running against Attorney General Paxton. This can't be a smart political move.
Well, I mean, it doesn't help. I don't think it's a nail in the coffin of a campaign or anything like that, because, you know, certainly the more rural counties would help statewide Republicans. But given his kind of history of bucking Republicans, whether it's with the Alamo or whether even it's with, you know, getting folks upset down in Galveston with the rollover pass incident a couple years ago with the GLO office, I don't think it's going to help. But I do want to clarify, because it does sound as though there's no money coming to Harris County when there's $90.4 million going to cities within Harris County. So it's not as though the county has been completely overlooked. The county government didn't get money, but some cities in the county did.
All right, Chris, take 30 seconds.
Well, this is pure politics. This is George Bush shutting out Harris County and the city of Houston for $1 billion because he doesn't want to give money to the Democrats who are running both those, the biggest county and the biggest city in the state. That's all it is, pure and simple.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Still to come, acknowledging once and for all what we see but can't explain. Yep, we are talking unidentified flying objects on the other side of this break, so stick around. Okay, folks, it's looking more and more like we are not alone, as in the universe. Next month, U.S. intelligence agencies are set to deliver a report to Congress on unidentified aerial phenomenon, and apparently there are a lot of them caught on tape that defy explanation. Panel, we're talking about UFOs maneuvering in ways that are simply not technologically feasible yet for us humans. So who wants some of this topic? I'm going to start with Marcus Davis.
Listen, I think as intelligent Americans, I think as intelligent human beings, we should be open to discovering and exploring what's out there. And I think it's time for us to move away from this whole, what do we call it, the UFO bashing, right? I think it's time for us to move away from people believing that there are other things that exist, people believing that we should explore the existence of other things. And, you know, this idea of you look at me like I'm crazy because I say I saw an unidentified flying object and let's dig into that. We've got to get away from that. I think it's arrogant and I think it's ignorant. We've got to move forward in research.
Okay, Charles, you welcome this hearing?
Very much so. I mean, just like Marcus said, I think it's ignorant for us to think that we're the only ones out there and that nothing else could possibly exist. And if you go back and very recently, former President Obama did an interview where he alluded to this and said some of the things that he had come across while he was president would be interesting for the American public to know. Former Majority Leader Harry Reid just wrote an op-ed. He was the one who wrote the legislation funding the research program. He said there's stuff that the public should know that wouldn't jeopardize our safety. And so I think it's worthy of having a serious conversation about.
All right, Chris Tritico, do we need to know more about this?
Well, absolutely. It's silly for us to assume that in all the planets out there, the billions and billions of planets out there, that we're the only people, we're the only life form that there is. And so to assume that these UFOs that we've captured are not something that's looking at us, I think we need to explore it, we need to look at it, and we need to figure out if there is something else that's exploring our planet and see if we can't make something out of it.
All right, Sue, how about some input?
I think it's interesting. I think it's very arrogant of us to think that there aren't other forms of whatever life out there on other planets. You know, I grew up with a grandmother who didn't believe we went to the moon. You know, she said, "Don't be a fool. It's a fake." She had seen the kitty hawk fly. She couldn't fathom this. I think we move beyond that thinking, and I think it's interesting, and I think we should pursue it.
Gary Polland, you are intellectually curious. Do you think we should be examining this and I guess transparently sharing everything we've got?
Well, I think the answer to both those questions is yes. And here's the other thing that we didn't talk about. Given that we all believe there's life on other planets, I don't know how close they are to us, but the galaxy's vast, so there surely is life. Is that life a danger to human life on Earth? We don't know that. And that's why it needs to be transparent, and we need to share that information with every other country that's here. But there could be a threat at some point to the survival of humanity. Who knows?
Charles, I got to ask you this. Are you excited about what we may find?
Oh, very much so. I mean, growing up, I've always watched those shows about what happened in Roswell and with the big disaster and then finding all these parts and, you know, not really giving an answer as to what it is. So I'm very excited about what they might find. I mean, we should all be. We live in this universe and this galaxy, and we should want to know what's out there and be curious about it. So I'm very excited.
I just hope they come in peace.
Trumps out there, and we want to find them.
All right. Thanks for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next with Fox News Sunday and host Chris Wallace. From all of us here, we really want you to have a safe and healthy week.